Hey, it's Jack here, the 24-year-old graphic designer from England. So, as you know on this channel, if you've been watching it week after week, which pretty much no one has because it's got like 20 views on the last video, I basically talk about a different graphic design orientated book every week. And then I present it to you here on YouTube. Why? Because 1, I want to improve your graphic design skills. 2, I want to motivate you to design. And then 3, I want to inform you about what books you should get your hands on this week. Pretty saucy read here, The Brand Gap by Marty Neumeier. It's not strictly about the intricacies of graphic design, but it's incredibly important to understand exactly who you're designing for and understand the language of business, which is hence why I'm presenting you this book this week. So, who is Marty Neumeier?
Marty has had a diverse career in creative industries. He began his career as a designer, but became a skilled copywriter and strategist. He has worked as an identity designer, a journalist, a package designer, a magazine publisher and brand consultant, and is now the director of transformation at Liquid Agency. He's worked with brands like Apple, Adobe and Kodak.
So what is this book about then? This book explains what a brand is and then how to strategically manage that. So at the start of the book, Marty explains that a brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service or company. In other words, it's not about the company's projection of what they do, it's the customer's perception of that company. So in other words, it's not what you say it is, it's what the customer says it is. And just to clarify, a brand is not a logo, a brand is not a corporate identity system, and a brand is not a product. So after explaining what a brand is, he goes on to explain the management strategies that companies should employ so that the customer's perception of that brand is positive. Although this isn't a big book, it's packed full of really useful information. It's really dense, so every single page has got something useful and it's got diagrams to back up the points that Marty Neumeier is making. So it's really, really easy to understand the ideas. So on to the 3 biggest takeaways that I've got from this book. Number 1, keep it simple, keep it pure. So one thing that Marty says that's really important to do is to ask yourself 3 questions at the start of your business. So 1, who are you? 2, what do you do? And 3, why do you do it? Now these are all really, really basic questions, but they get harder as you go along. Obviously, who are you is pretty obvious. But then 2, what do you do? If you don't have a very short, concise message that you do X, then you're probably doing too much and maybe you should think about taking away those products or services that are superfluous. And then 3, why do you do what you do? The essence of what you do is perhaps the hardest thing to reconcile. A lot of people, for example, make, food products. And you might say, well, we have the best biscuits in the world. How can you prove that? If it's not compelling, then likely it is you don't have the differentiating factor that means that you're going to command that brand loyalty and actually get customers that are really, really into your brand and willing to sacrifice other brands so that they can buy your brand. So to use a really good example, Marty cites John Deere. So John Deere is the Who, obviously, the founder. What do? They make farming equipment and tractors in particular. And then 3, why? What's their why? What's their essence? Why should the customers care about John Deere? Because they have been making this equipment for generations of farmers, so it's a very trusted brand. So adding to these 3 really, really compelling answers, they've got a really good tagline, which is nothing runs like a deer. So all in all, it's short, it's sharp, it's snappy, the whole package is a very, very compelling brand, which is hence why the company is worth $40 billion. So all in all, if you don't have 3 compelling answers to these questions, then likely it is you don't have a differentiating factor, which means that you're probably not going to stand out in a crowded marketplace. Sorry. So the second biggest takeaway is brand or bland. This is something that I've really struggled with because you want to come across as professional, but you'd like to think you have a personality and you want to show it to attract people that are similar than you to do business with. So a lot of bigger companies, more corporate companies, don't necessarily have much of a human personal touch because they're very big, corporate, and it's hard to be personal and jokey when you've got such a big company with probably very strict brand guidelines, etc. But don't be afraid to show your personality and have a brand that is more personal and does have a touch of humanness. So sometimes companies are afraid of being less than dignified when actually they just now become stiff and inhuman to customers that ultimately are humans and want a personal touch. It doesn't necessarily need to be that you need to be a jokey graphic designer or whatever you do, UX, UI. It's just having a personality is quite important to attract people with that similar kind of mindset to you, and ultimately those are the customers that you're going to get on with and are going to respect your work. So I think it's really important to try and be as authentic as possible in regards to how your brand messaging works. So third biggest takeaway, at retail, the product is the brand. Now this sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about, but Marty Neumeier explains that basically the product is the first touch point that the customer will have with that brand a lot of the time in retail. So in other words, the packaging needs to communicate the emotion to the customer. How do they do that? So how does one package beat another package when it comes to getting a customer to buy that product over another? How much of it down to logic and how much of it is down to creativity? So in other words, what are you competing with mostly, right brain thinking or left brain thinking? So in order to decide what kind of packaging design is going to attract the customer, it's important to understand the natural reading sequence of the customer. So the natural reading sequence of most customers when they go into a supermarket might be they might notice a packet, then they'll ask themselves what it is, and then why should they care? So on the packaging there might be on the front a brief why to buy message. Then they'll look for more information to support that why to buy message, and then finally the shopper is ready for the more scientific part, which might be the ingredients which are on the back of the cereal packet, for example. By presenting product information when thinking about this natural reading sequence, if you put the why before the features, then you're going to create a sympathetic bond with the customer and create loyal customers when they try out your product and then tell their friends how great it is. So who should read this book then? I would recommend reading this book if one, you have a brand that's failing. Two, I'd recommend this book if you've got a brand that wants to expand their products or services. For example, if you're a graphic designer that's doing logo design and you might want to do brand identity design, then I think knowing how to position yourself in a really competitive marketplace like this would be really, really important to read this book. And then thirdly, I think if you are looking to get into brand identities and more brand identity design rather than simply motion graphics or logo design or whatever you do, then I think this book would be really important to read as well, because you can offer more brand workshops before actually doing the graphic design work for them, which I think would be really helpful to offer to customers. So I just rambled for ages there, but if you like this kind of video and you like what we're doing on this channel, then hit the like and subscribe button, turn on your notifications so that you know every week when these come out. And if you want me to read a particular book, then write in the comments below. Have a great week and see you next week. I'll edit that bit.